welcome back to the Strategic Air Command and Aerospace Museum. I'm your curious curator, Brian York, and I'm standing here in our exhibit called Quest. It's an adventure around the world. It's all about navigation. Now, what actually is navigation? Navigation is figuring out where you are, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there. And we use navigation every single day. We use it to get from one place to another, whether it's in our community, around our neighborhood, or somewhere around the world. And it's really easy for us to do this because we've got maps, we've got atlases, and we've got GPS that we program it in, and it tells us turn by turn to get to where we want to be. But how do you do it on much, much longer journeys? And how did they do it long ago? Well, one way they did it was through using the stars. And when I say use the stars, they use the constellations. Now, what is a constellation? A constellation is a group of stars that is typically named after some mythical creature or animal or figure or something. But it is always constant. It always is in the same spot at certain times. And how do you find those? Well, you use something called a planisphere. Now, our planisphere here is a little bigger than what you'd normally find. And what you would do is you would actually point it in the direction you're facing, north, south, east, west. And you would then turn your planisphere around and find a constellation that you actually see up off the horizon. And once you find that, you use a compass and essentially a stopwatch to figure out how you're going to get to where you want to go. Oh, and you're also going to need a map. So with all of these, the sailors of old times could navigate themselves out into the open water. Now, there's other ways that they would do that. One way is they would eventually use a sextant, which actually helped them spot stars and keep track of those on a more regular basis. So you can have a plan, you can have a path, you know what direction you want to go, but how do you make sure you stay on that? Well, you always have to constantly find that star and navigate based off that. And that's how they use celestial navigation. But how do airplanes navigate up in the sky? Well, they've got a couple of ways that they can do that. One is called VFR. That's Visual Following Rules, or Visual Flight Rules. And what that means is you're in your airplane and you look for landmarks, for cities, for mountain ranges, rivers, oceans, and you fly towards that. You know where you're supposed to go. You have maps, you have compasses. They would also use other equipment they would spot stars from the aircraft, and they would use ways to track that and be able to plot a course on that. All right. But how do aircraft navigate up in the sky and using stars? Well, they have two different methods of navigating. One is called VFR, or Visual Flight Rules. And what that means is that you're flying way up high, or maybe not so high. You look down on the ground. You spot rivers and oceans, highways, railroads, cities, different things that you can spot that you know are on your map and how you're going to get to those. And that helps you get from one point to another until you're at your destination. Now, they also have celestial navigation for aircraft where they use different instruments to spot the moon, the sun, the stars, and figure out where they're located based on how high that sits above the horizon and what direction by the compass. They can then take that information and plug it in and develop a course that they can follow, and they can actually manage that by a compass and by their speed. And so they can use those. Now, IFR is another way that aircraft can navigate. And these are a series of radio signals placed throughout the country along different flight paths. And the pilot of the aircraft just has to tune in to the right frequency that is preset for his flight plan that he will follow along, and that tells him where to go. And then you have the air traffic controllers on the ground who are tracking aircraft by a specific radar code and can actually give them advice on where they need to turn or how to best approach the runway they're trying to get to. Okay, now what tools get used in aerial navigation and even in naval navigation? Well, one of the things they use is a sextant. Now, this is a specific sextant that was made for the Navy in order to do some surveying, and that's basically spotting stars on the horizon. This particular sextant was actually built in 1919, and what they would do is they would look through the little scope here, which goes to a mirror, and they can then search the stars that they need from that, and then they calculate different degrees on the entire piece to help them identify where they're at. Now, one of the ways that in aviation and in naval navigation that they figure out these things is based on publications. In 1945, the U.S. published the American Air Almanac, and what that does is that gives you the location of where stars should be at that time. And so they go through and they have all the tables in there, and obviously you have to go through a lot of education and a lot of training to be able to even learn how to just use this simple book. Now, once they have all of this information, what do they do with it? Well, we've got a different sextant here. As you can see, it's very different than our other one. This is known as a Bausch & Lomb bubble sextant, and this is actually from 1952. And this is designed so that the navigator will actually look through the viewfinder, which then goes up out through a bubble in the top of the aircraft. And they can go through and they spot not one, but several stars, and then they can actually click a button that will keep a record of that on a disc. Now, the reason it's called a bubble sextant is because the bubble is actually in the aircraft designed to help the pilot keep the aircraft steady and level, which helps with the navigation. Once they get that information, they then can gather other information, whether it's the airspeed, the altitude, humidity, all sorts of things that they need, and they plot it into what's known as their dead reckoning navigation computer. Now, this is not like the computer that you might see at home or have on a laptop or even on your phone, but what they do is they can put all the information, they line everything up, and that helps give them information to plot their course. And then they would use dividers, such as this, to where they know where they are. They already know on the map where they want to be, and this actually helps them figure out exactly how far it is they're going, which, factoring everything in, they can plot an accurate course. Navigation can be very complicated when you're going over a great distance. Sometimes it's very complicated when you're just going across town. There's a lot to learn within this exhibit and a lot more to learn from here at the Strategic Air Command and Aerospace Museum. All right, I want to thank you all for joining us again today. This was a great time learning about navigation. There's so much more to learn. Please visit our website, sacmuseum.org, and look at the Curious Curator blog.